What's it once? Put it down.
Good evening, and welcome to the Town of Burlington Select Board meeting for November 22nd, 2021. Please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do you want to identify yourself for the record? Just tell everybody who you are.
Oh, I'm Duncan Foster, and I'm in Weeblos.
I'm Erin Foster and I'm in Weeblos.
Oh, thank you for leading us in the pledge tonight.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Bob. Nice job.
All right, please be seated. All right, first item on the agenda is item number 326. It's an approval for a waiver of an earth moving permit. And we have the applicant here. Sir, could you identify yourself for the record?
Sure. For the record, Robert Buckley, Reamer and Bronstein, here this evening on behalf of the applicant, the Nordblom Company. This is pursuant to your general bylaw for the removal of excess soils from the development site. A little history here. This is the same, essentially the same permit that was done on the previous project, which was an office building. Now it's the multifamily project that was approved and reviewed by the Planning Board, Conservation, and all of the other boards as part of the regulatory special permit hearing. With that in mind, that since it is essentially the same, it's been reviewed, we're requesting a waiver of the public hearing. The form has been completed, the fee paid, and compliance with all the rules and regulations.
Thank you, Mr. Buckley. Just for clarification, this request is to waive the requirement for a public hearing. So that's one part of this, and then there's a second piece, which is if it gets waived, then we would have to vote to either approve or deny the earth moving permit as described in the packet. So any discussion with the board on this? Michael, I'll start with you.
No, Jim, I'm fine with it.
Mr. Morandi?
No, fine.
Mr. Priest?
No, the backup answered all my questions.
Okay. Mr. Hogan?
Yeah, no, we've done these before, and I'm confident that the public hearings that have been held, all the important questions were asked, so no one's being denied any opportunity here, so I'm good.
I have no questions because that backup was very informative and very detailed and basically left no questions to be asked. Mr. Sagarino, anything? No?
I'll make a motion to waive public hearing.
Okay, motion's been made to waive the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so it's 5-0-0 to waive the requirement for a public hearing. All right, now, that being said, I'll be looking for a motion to approve the request for earth moving permit.
I will make a motion to approve the earth moving.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstained, 5-0-0. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Buckley.
you very much. Everyone have a healthy and happy Thanksgiving,
You too.
including you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Buckley, because before we go to the next agenda item, just want to welcome back Paul Sagarino to our live meetings. Mr. Sagarino, it's nice to see your smiling face here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and, thank you so much to the board for your support during my ordeal, and I'm working hard to get back full-time as quickly as I can, having a little bit of a rough time of it, but appreciate the support that I've gotten from the board. I also think it's really important to acknowledge the work that's been done by the department heads and the employees in my absence. It's really been amazing to be able to deal with what I'm dealing with, and at the same time, know that everything here in the town of Burlington is going to be going smoothly. Last but not least, he's probably going to kill me, but I really owe a great debt of gratitude to John Denizio. He's just an unbelievable assistant and a friend, and I can't thank him enough for what he's been able to do during my absence. So thank you very much to the board, to the residents. I received many cards and emails and phone calls and text messages from residents as well, and it was very encouraging over the past few months. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you, Mr. Sagarino, and if you didn't mention it, I believe all the members here would have mentioned it. Mr. Denizio has been the next man up and stepped into those shoes and did a fantastic job, has been doing a fantastic job. Okay, next item on the agenda is 327, it's update on ambulance services. Mr. Denizio.
Okay, I'm gonna, well, I share my screen here. Can everybody see that? Yep. So everybody is aware, Mr. Arthur McDonald, who's here with us tonight and will speak after me, had come to the board with some concerns and some questions about ambulance services as it pertains to billing. And he had left some questions with us, and him and I have got to spend a little bit of time together, and probably will continue after tonight. But we thought that it might be helpful if we sort of just do a quick overview here with the board tonight. And I believe Mr. McDonald has some things to say, and then, you know, we have some things planned for the future to help educate folks on ambulance service and also ambulance billing. So just a couple of quick slides, nothing big. The main questions and concerns from Mr. McDonald were, are fees even allowed to be charged for ambulance service? If so, who authorizes those fees? Why do we use a third-party billing contractor? Is that allowed? And where does the revenue go? So we have addressed those questions with him, and we'll go over them quickly tonight. And then I also added one that is, how can we find out more info? So one of the things going through this exercise is, it is pretty confusing. After you take an ambulance, what happens next? And at our last meeting, I told you what the next steps were, and we'll get to it later in the slides. But the first couple questions are these fees allowable and who authorizes them? And the answers are yes, the ambulance charges for services for fees for ambulance is allowable through Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 5F. And who authorizes the fees is the Select Board authorizes the fees, and the last time we've done that was in 2019, when the chief was in here to talk about ambulance fees and what they were gonna be, and that was in conjunction and dovetailed nicely with our switch from providing only BLS service to ALS service. We've talked about that a lot, so I won't spend much time on that. This slide is just a snapshot of what the fees are, and this page looks pretty simple, and there's a lot of numbers on it in a couple of columns, but it looks simple enough. But when you talk about who gets billed and what, it's actually quite complex. But to sort of just have a quick overview, these are the fees that were voted. You see in the far left column is the category of the fee. There are 3 more columns that say towns rate, Medicare cap, and Medicaid cap. And those are quite simply the rate that is billed by the town for any ride, and broken down into those categories of BLS and ALS, the other things that are included with it. And then the Medicare cap and Medicaid cap, as the chief has told us at the time when these were approved, are if you are on Medicare or Medicaid, that is the maximum allowable cost. So you'll get a bill that is what is the town's rate. Your initial bill will be billed at the town's rate, and then after it's confirmed through that you're a Medicare patient, there's contractual allowances that kick in and credits the bill down to the maximum Medicare or Medicaid rate that you see there. Again, just kind of a quick overview of a complex thing. Why do we use a third party billing? I just had to put this one picture on there because it made me laugh when I was thinking about the complexity of it all and trying to explain what goes into that. So stole that from somebody, but I referenced them on there. So why do we use a third party? Ambulance billing is very complex. Like any medical billing process, it's very complex. There's, codes you have to know, insurance guidelines. If we were gonna do this ourselves and we weren't gonna contract this out to a third party, we'd need to add FTE. We'd need to hire 1 or 2 people that were dedicated to billing or dedicated to the accounts receivable staff. we would need to provide and pay for specialized training for these folks. This would be, learning patient care reports, the medical coding, that the book, if you haven't seen it, is about that big. And most importantly, what the Medicare and insurance guidelines are, what can be billed for, and who you actually send the bill to, which that might not sound confusing, but if you're in an auto accident versus a slip and fall, or you have, an emergency at your home versus somewhere else, that does get quite confusing. So the third-party option is clearly the most cost-effective and efficient way to do this. It's what most fire departments do. The fire department has been using an RFP process to contract for this for many years, I think over 30 years. The current vendor has been in, this Armstrong Ambulance, has been in doing that service for us since 2010. And we do put out an RFP for that, and, companies submit proposals to be able to do that for us. And I did mention it was the most cost-effective and efficient, and because of the expertise, it's efficient, but the cost-effective piece is really why it's worth it. It's the payment to the contractor is 3% of what we collect. So 3% of, we're around 1.2 billion, say last year was 1.2 billion, it's $36,000. We couldn't even get we could get half a staff with that, maybe, but we wouldn't be able to pay for benefits and things like that. So it really is the most cost-effective way to do it. Revenue recognition was one of the questions about, what do we do with the revenue? How is it reported? So the board has heard this many times, two pieces of the revenue back before. So the two pieces are the BLS, which is basic life-saving, and ALS, advanced life-saving. So for basic life-saving, nothing's changed. The revenue we get that's billed by Armstrong, collected by them, is 100% turned over to us, and it's recorded in the general fund the way it has been for many, many years, and it's part of our local receipts revenue budget. The ALS was handled very similar before January of 2020. That was split 60-40 with Armstrong because they were actually providing the ALS service for us. We weren't doing the ALS ourselves, and Armstrong was getting 60% of the revenue collected, and we were getting 40. Once we started doing providing that service on our own, in May of 2019 at town meeting, we established and approved what's called the Receipts Reserve account for ambulance services. So this is a separate account that ambulance service receipts for ALS are deposited into, and to spend them, they would need to be appropriated out through a transfer approved by town meeting. So there's two categories of revenues. They're treated differently now. They were treated the same before. How can we find out more? What are we going to do next? So tonight, we're here to do just a quick overview, sort of answer some questions. We're planning an ambulance information session in conjunction with the Council on Aging, the Fire Department, and our ambulance billing service provider, Armstrong Ambulance. We're doing that in January over at the Council on Aging to invite folks in to sort of kind of go over after you have an ambulance ride, what do you expect next? The fire department will be there with an ambulance to sort of show what can you expect when we come, and then the billing company will be there to say, what can you expect after the service, and what are you gonna expect for a bill, how much and what to do. So at that point, we can get into the differences for billing, so when we talked about billing, we said there's the billing rate and then the maximum rate for Medicare. So you will get billed the full rate, you get credited down, you get the maximum Medicare rate. And then the only thing that the patient would be responsible for would be if they don't have secondary Medicare insurance, they could have a copay. So either the secondary insurance would pay it and the person would never see a bill, or if they had a copay, they would get a bill, and that could range from $50 to $500, I guess, and they would have to pay that. And what else are we also doing? So those are those are the things that we'll cover at that information session, and they'll be there to talk to someone specifically about their bill if they want to talk about it, or get into more granular details about the billing. And then the fire department has also had a great idea to create a fact page, ambulance fact page. so that they can put on their website, so anybody can go and just click on and get some information that way. So I just wanted to do a quick overview to sort of cover the answers to the questions that Mr. McDonald and I had talked about, since they were brought up at a public session, to make sure everybody could hear them. And I think now, could handle some questions from the board, or we could hear from Mr. McDonald.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Denizio. Arthur, I know you probably have questions, but let me get to the board first. Michael, any questions on this?
Not really. I mean, this is a policy that I've got, well over 30 years of experience. I'm aware of the policy. It's been in place since I joined the department in '89, so nothing's really changed other than making that move to ALS. Otherwise, it's all, nothing new here.
Thank you, Michael. Mr. Randy? Mr. Priest?
Not this time, no.
Mr. Hogan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, John touched on just about everything that I'm familiar with, and I'm sure Mr. McDonald might have a question or two that I might go, oh, yeah. But yeah, it's we've had people call us before, and we've dealt with these in the past, so I don't have any additional questions at this time, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you, Mr. Hogan. My only comment is this seems to be more of an awareness issue than a policy issue per se, but I think we're gonna address that awareness issue with these information sessions, and I think Rich, we might have asked you to cover that as well.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we definitely would do that.
All right, Mr. McDonald, did you have any questions you wanted to ask? If you do,
Statements to make.
all right, you can come up here and identify yourself, please.
First, I want to thank John for all the time that he spent with me and his patience in dealing with an angry old man at times. I was going to talk about the mechanics of the process, but over the past week, I've received a few phone calls, and one of them touched me real hard. A woman called and said, "I can't afford an ambulance. So if I have to go to the hospital, I've got to find a way of doing it because I can't afford to pay the ambulance bill, no matter what it is." Well, that hurt, and I'm sure there's a number of senior citizens in that boat. My comment to her was, call me. Take the ambulance and then call me when you get home. And I'll take it from there. You know what I'm like, you know what I do. I've been an advocate for many types of handicaps. But that hurt, that really hurt. And I know this isn't the town of Burlington to do that. Another call I got was, I don't understand the bill. I don't know if I had anything done in the ambulance or not, but all these charges just don't make sense to me. And I think I talked to John about that. That also hurt. Because once again, it's a senior citizen who's got a big fat bill in front of her. And then her comment was, I can imagine what it's gonna cost me if I have to take an ambulance home. It's gonna be well over what the town charges for an ambulance. I've talked to a couple of people that have had to take the ambulance home. It's not a pretty bill, especially for a senior citizen on fixed income. The third issue was, if you look at the bill, it doesn't give the patient any real information about what was done in the ambulance. It's coded. Number two, it's not a bill. It's a receipt, and legally, it's not a receipt. It's supposed to be a two-part bill, where, just like the town collects taxes, you have a remitting copy and a copy for the person, for the payee. The bill you get from Armstrong is a receipt. That's not a bill. Under business law, I remember them saying, an invoice is a demand to collect money for the payment of service. When you send a receipt, you're assuming it's been paid, because that's what you get from Armstrong is a receipt. So technically, they can ignore it because it's a receipt. Now, I don't want to get into the mechanics. The thing I'm saying to myself is, this town has done a lot for seniors. I think it's time to take the next step. Because I hear, people have told me if you worked for the town, you don't pay for ambulance service. Now, 3 or 4 people that I've talked to who worked for the town and used ambulance service never got a bill. I'll leave it at that. That's an issue. All right. What I'm really asking, and I think the town should, or the select board should take the position, and I'm asking them to, not to charge more than a basic fee for senior citizens who are on Social Security. The ambulance bill, I'll use a number, should be no more than what their medical insurance will pay. In my case, my medical insurance will pay $125. Then the senior, and I don't know many seniors that want to avoid not paying a bill. I think as seniors, we get all upset when we see a bill. That's not in our budget. So I'm asking you to consider a policy that says seniors pay a minimum of $125 for ambulance service. That's basically what I'm sitting here for now. I'd go over a whole bunch of things I didn't go over with John, and I don't want to do that. This is not the place to do it. I think the solution is simple. This town can afford to continue taking care of its seniors and keeping their costs down to survive in the town of Burlington, and that's all I'm asking. I hope you'll look at my request favorably so that there's a number of seniors that are gonna feel a little more comfortable when they pick up that phone and ask for an ambulance. That's basically all I have to say right now.
Arthur, thank you for that, and thank you for bringing this issue to light. It gives us a lot of things to think about. I'll go to the board to see if there's any fault, Mr. Hogan.
No, but, we can have another conversation with John and just clarify the points that have been made.
Mr. Priest?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd be curious, John, to find out if there's anything we can do through Armstrong in terms of clarifying the statements, so that they're more clear, or at least put in layman's terms. I know that when I get medical bills, they're confusing as all get out. And if we can have any intervention, I think that'd be great. My concern is that you're asking us to subsidize what will amount to millions of dollars on an annual basis. And I'm the first person to step up and support seniors, don't get me wrong. But that's a lot of money. And for the town to do that, I would imagine is gonna drive up taxes for everybody. So I have to weigh what you're asking us to do.
Let me respond to that if I may.
Arthur, can you just let me finish?
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm not saying no, I'm saying that it's a very, very large ask. But I also think that maybe perhaps it would be of the board's interest for the seniors of this town to contact Ken Gordon and Cindy Freeman and say at a state level, what can we be doing for our seniors? Because you're not wrong. Seniors are typically not paid attention to when it comes to things like, ambulance charges, taxes, you're on fixed incomes, and when things go up, it's not like your income adjusts for that. And so it's, in my opinion, that's unfair. I think it's a much bigger problem. To the point where when I was doing some research this weekend after looking at all the questions and answers, there are some states where there are private companies that seniors can opt into, and for, I forget what it was, 80 a year or 80 a month dollars, this company would cover the cost of this private company was subsidizing the cost of ambulance rides for seniors. And I don't know if a program like that exists in Massachusetts. But, you know, if we could help bring that into the state, you know, there's an opportunity where the tax dollars aren't subsidizing your bills, but somebody is, and it's a much more nominal cost that can be built into your income. So, I think that Bob's right, this is a much larger conversation that's gonna continue. You know, so I'm not leaning one way or the other, I'm just kind of throwing out my opinion and things that I found, and, I appreciate you raising it to us. So thank
Arthur, you had a response?
Yeah, well, I'd like to address that, but about 2 months ago, there was an article in the Globe. That there was a bill put before the state about controlling the cost, not of medical care. The portion they threw out was the ambulance cost. There was a lot of lobbying on that effort to have it thrown out, all right, by ambulance service. Now let's talk about how we arrive at the cost to charge a citizen a bill now, anyone who uses our service. We don't have any overhead like the private companies do, which is part of their bill. I mean, we as a town made the decision to have ambulance service for the benefit of all citizens of the town. It shouldn't reflect in the bill to people who use the ambulance. That ambulance is part of the fire department for things that happen in the course of a fire or an accident where an ambulance is critical. You can't wait for Armstrong or any other company to show up when you've got someone laying in the street from an auto accident, and the town recognizes that. That's why we have a second ambulance, and kudos to the town for doing that. But the overhead cost of applying it to a patient's bill is not valid, because we have the ambulance service for more than transporting a patient, an elderly person, to the hospital. And yet, that cost is in the bill you send to an elderly person. I've talked to a couple of people in the healthcare business, and I've been more than talking, I've had some really tough battles with my provider. And they'll tell you straight out, they feel $125 is reasonable for their part of the ambulance bill, because a lot of it is overhead, which can be absorbed elsewhere than passing it on to a health provider. And I said the same thing to the town. We shouldn't be putting things in our bill that reflects what an ambulance company would put in their bill, but we do. You toss all that out, and it's not much more than $125, which is the basic ambulance service. I mean, we charge by the mile. We've got the smallest town in the area. Our mileage to Leahy is less than 3 miles. We don't charge $100 a mile, and I think that's what ambulance services charge. All right. Also, ambulance services have been cited for sending EMTs who aren't qualified.
I think we're getting a little off
Well,
track.
I'm gonna get, but that's what you pay for when you have ambulance service. In our fire department, not every fireman who responds with an ambulance is qualified. Not does he have to be, because we're fortunate to have Leahy right here. All I'm asking you to think about is, what's the true charge for someone to go to Leahy, because 95% of them go to Leahy? I got a bill for $500. My wife got a bill for $125. Why? My neighbor across the street hasn't gotten a bill in 10 years. Why?
Well, those are questions we can't answer up here.
But you talked about we could lose millions if we took away that fee. Well, we're losing millions now, obviously, because there are, I'm not gonna say a lot, but there are a number of people that I've talked to have never gotten an ambulance bill, and they go regularly. Woman across the street goes 6, 8 times a year. Never got a bill. Neighbor next to me, he goes 3 or 4 times a year. Never got a bill. The system isn't consistent. If you're concerned about the revenue it produces, then bill everybody equally. That's not happening. I don't know what percentage of people are not getting bills, but it may be enough that if everyone got that bill for $125, it may reduce the price that people are paying now. For me, it was $500 to $2,000 to go 3 miles.
Well, the variable that might kind of play here that we're not talking about is what each individual's insurance is, which we haven't even begun to talk about. And what I'm concerned about is not the revenue, but when we subsidize the cost, what that's gonna mean to every individual taxpayer when the tax bill goes up, because now the town's covering the costs that are currently being taken care of either through the insurance or through the individual who was taken to the hospital via an ambulance.
I'm not asking you to subsidize the cost. I'm asking you to make it a true cost. The cost of operating that ambulance, one, it's part of the general structure of the town. 2, maybe it's special because you're taking elderly people to the hospital, and probably a lot more than the average person. But all the overhead pieces that you put in that bill are not valid, because you're doing the same things that the ambulance companies do. You're charging fees for something you don't need to charge, but it's in the bill. And that's what I'm saying.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
can we make it a point that Armstrong address this when they come in January? To
Absolutely.
be specific about the bill and address it, and then we can have that conversation.
Denizio has that, yep.
Yeah, so I only quickly breezed over it because Armstrong was gonna spend lots of time on it. But when I was talking about the bills and how everybody's billed one rate, and then there's a Medicare max, and then Medicare pays all of that except for whatever your copay is if you have one. So everybody that's on Medicare has a copay unless they have supplemental coverage, and that can range between 50 and hundreds of dollars. 125 is a low deductible, really. It's usually a couple hundred, but that's all that the patient would get billed for. Medicare would pay their insurance company would pay the rest of the bill, and that's all that would get billed. And to the point of, I think that's something we could quantify, of how much of the Medicare eligible copay only or patient pay is it that the total is. It would, and I think it would be 6 figures, but I don't think it would be high 6 figures. But we could quantify that and be able to talk more about that. But the piece about, some people getting paid, some people getting billed and some people not, we have a very detailed accounts receivable list that has gone through fine-tooth comb all the time about what's still outstanding, and it does take a while for a bill to get paid because of the process. The insurance company is first billed at a rate. That bill can be changed based on if you're Medicare or not, or that could be changed because now there's a second insurance involved, for instance, with a car accident or something like that. But it is gonna be driven by what type of insurance the person has and whether they have a copay or not, and that's all that they're gonna be billed if they're a Medicare patient, and the end result is they're gonna be billed whatever their copay is. And we can easily, not easily, but we can get that number and be able to quantify that and have a bigger conversation. But that's exactly what Armstrong is coming to talk about with people.
Right, and I think that's the idea of having this special meeting on ambulance billing and costs, so that we can focus on this.
Let me give you an example of the bill in front of me for $2,000.
Okay,
Okay? It starts out with contractual allowed Medicare, $1,492, right? Then it says contractual allowed Medicare for $67.21. Write-off town abatement, $125. Payment EFT. Anyone know what EFT is?
electronic fund transfer.
Okay? $389 for an electronic fund transfer from the town of Burlington? Payment left, $22.89. Now,
All right.
That's-
why would anyone pay $389 to the town?
Arthur, hold on one second, Mr. Denizio.
So, this is one of the things where I was talking about how the bill can be confusing. So what we're talking about is the receipt of the payments. So the total bill was the $2,096. And that's the ALS rate, which is $2,005. And then the $30 per mile that's charged, that gets you to $296. Those charges that we're talking about are actually the decreases in the bill. They're the credits to the bill. The first two that are called contractual allowances, that's the adjustment from the regular rate to the Medicaid rate. So it's an adjustment for both the rate and the mileage. So that gets those down to, you know, the $514 for the ALS piece, and then the mileage, which has changed from $30 a mile down to $7 a mile. So that, those payments that you heard of $389, those are the payments from the insurance company. The two payments for $389 plus $22, that's the base rate and the mileage. And what's left, and this is how all the bills are handled, what's left is the copay. The $125 that's remaining is the copay. So in this case, there was an abatement from the town to cover the cost of that copay. You know, I have other bill examples that are very similar with different copays that, you know, is either a patient pay with the check number or a patient pay with a credit card authorization or something like that. So it is confusing, as Arthur brought up, that they're getting a statement or more of a receipt than an itemized bill. And maybe that's because an itemized bill might even be more confusing. But again, it's something we'll be able to easily show anybody that says, what do these mean? Because you wouldn't know if you know, if you didn't go over it. If I didn't call, I wouldn't have known.
Sure.
So I think the meeting will be helpful. And the reason we're not doing it tonight in an open meeting is we're not gonna talk about people's specific bills
Right.
in an open meeting.
So Arthur, as you can see, this is in its infancy. We're gonna have a meeting.
I understand that,
But I haven't
the
finished.
point I'm making, when people call me, what do you think what do you think I should do? You know what I tell them? Don't pay the bill.
All right, well, that's,
That's wrong, and I know it's wrong.
okay.
But because we don't get the answers that John and I have been discussing now. Having a meeting with senior citizens and straightening out that, you'll get more people writing that check if it's reasonable. And you won't worry about, you won't lose
Well,
millions.
the whole goal here is to eliminate everything, almost everything you've brought up. So we are working on that.
Fine, I appreciate
So
it.
that's, you just gotta, we can't resolve that at a meeting like
No,
this.
and I know that. I just wanted to raise it to that level.
And you, trust me, you've raised that point
Well,
very well. I think we get that. But again, I appreciate you bringing this to our attention because now we can focus on this. Mr.
No,
Priest, did you have anything further?
Just to clarify, the bill that Mr. McDonald has is for $125.
So the final piece payment that would be a patient payment would be for $125, which is copay.
Okay,
that's basically what my wife paid when we call an ambulance.
correct.
All right.
Okay.
Right? And that's what caused me to jump up.
Mr. Morandi,
Yes?
do you have any comments, questions, concerns?
No, I think Mr. McDonald has quite a few interesting points. The seniors are always been, I think everybody on this board is always thinking about the seniors and their subsidized income. Sometimes you have to think about what is considered a senior. Is it a 63, 65, retired, not retired? There's a bunch of seniors out there that have allotment of money that's endless, and there's a bunch of seniors out there that have a very fixed income. So when you start to get into that aspect of trying to give a senior a break, is it just straight out senior? Is it an income thing? Is it how does it work? So I think the meeting would be very interesting and very informative to a lot of people.
But you don't have to give them a break. You just have to be steady and fair.
I understand
Is it
that.
125? Is it 150? Can I take it out of my budget? Does it make sense?
Donald, I understand that.
Okay.
I just made a statement.
Everyone is,
That's
if
all
everyone's
I'm saying.
treated the same
All I'm
way,
saying
it's
is
not a
that
problem.
I think the meeting would be very, very interesting
Thank
for
you.
everybody.
Mr. Morandi, you all set?
Yes.
Mr. Runyon?
Yeah, let me just say that no two calls are ever alike. Jim, you know that.
Right.
Some people require much more complex treatment in there, so it's not just the drive from your house to the emergency room. Could be mild to wild, and anything, and everything in between, depending on the amount of equipment is used, and IV drugs or oxygen or all those
But if they
anything else.
require more.
That's why
Arthur, please,
that's why there are
let us-
sometimes, that's why his bill may have been different than his wife's bill, and so, they're all different, but I appreciate the time John's put into researching this. I think we got a lot of questions answered tonight, and Arthur, I understand, I get it, I wouldn't want to be getting a bill, I feel the same way you do, and I think there's a mechanism in place, and we've talked about abatements to certain folks. If they don't think they can pay it, they can reach out to us, and we can address them on an
But
individual
the
basis.
point I'm making is if they require complex treatment in that ambulance, that'll be paid by Medicare, because it's beyond just transporting.
Okay, that's all I have,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
All right. Arthur, any other
Thank
questions?
you.
before
No,
we move
thank
on?
you for
All right,
listening
we
to
just-
me.
Like I said, you brought this to our attention. We have a work in progress,
Yeah.
and it will get addressed.
You're
That I
gonna
can
have that meeting at the senior center? You'll let me know when that's gonna.
Thank you, Arthur.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Okay, next item on the agenda is a continued public hearing. It's approval for tax classification FY 2022, continued from November 8th. Mr., Sorry.
I hate to interrupt for one quick
Yep.
second, but we had a very nice pledge of allegiance. Before we go too much further, we have another Weeblo down there, and I'd like to just let the public know
Absolutely.
that is here so that she understands. I'm sorry I have to
That's all right.
interrupt
No,
the
no.
meeting,
Go ahead, Joe.
but they're important to us. That's our future right there, so one of them could be sitting up here when we're long gone. So we have a new member for the Weeblo committee. So would you like to stand up and introduce yourself, please?
Come up to the microphone, come up to the microphone.
My name is Rini, and I'm an AOL in PAC 105.
What was the last part?
I'm a AOL.
Well, we just wanted to recognize you because you came in a little bit late and we already recognized the other two, so I didn't want to miss anybody. So thank you for coming to our meeting tonight, and I hope you're enjoying it.
I am.
I really do, because some is very intriguing at your age to think about some of the stuff we go through. So I hope you're enjoying every minute of this meeting. All right?
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. I wasn't even aware, so it came in. Okay, Mr. Doherty, do you want to come up with your board, the Board of Assessors? And I'll start with Mr. Denizio, where this is a continued public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I think Jim and maybe some of his board members are going to come up. So we do this every year, and this is the final step of the process, of the FY '22 budget process, a process that started almost a year ago, 10 months ago, when we started talking about what our budget guidelines were going to be. The vote that you're going to take tonight will set the final tax rate for FY '22. This rate will encompass all approved spending for the FY '22 budget. And any of the options that Jim will discuss here tonight will keep us within those guidelines that were set last year. And it represents Jim, and Mr. Giannino is also here, and recognize members of the Board of Assessors, Mrs. O'Neill and Mr. Sheehan.
Kevin Sheehan is joining us remotely. He had a conflict.
Actually, both of them.
Paul's here.
Two Kevin.
He's got a
Two
split
Kevin
personality,
Sheehan.
so he wanted to make sure he had everything covered. Only kidding, Kevin.
Kevin,
I was on twice, sorry guys.
we got Kevin in stereo.
I just want
Just want to say, and Kevin came on, joined the board. He's been a tremendous asset. He joined at a very difficult time, just before COVID. So, as I say, he's been a great addition to the board, and he hasn't got some of the visibility, but I think he'll be a fantastic attribute to the town. Okay. Having said that, for the, every year, this is part of your responsibility, one of the, major functions, in my opinion, that the board has, and that is deciding in this year, approximately $130 million in tax levy. How much of that burden is going to be the responsibility of the residential taxpayers and how much will be the responsibility of the commercial taxpayers. As you know, we come to the board, that being the Board of Assessors, and present the valuations of the town. This year, it's about slightly over $7.9 billion in taxable value. That's both real estate, residential, commercial, industrial, as well as tangible personal property, which is largely driven by the public utilities, cable companies, et cetera. In addition, the other major component of how a tax rate is developed is the $130 million I alluded to, and that's a figure provided to us as a result of town meeting deciding how much money they want to spend in the community, less any local receipts. I'll leave the local receipts up to John, who can speak to that if there's any questions, but essentially it's state aid, building permits, hotel tax, meals tax, et cetera, et cetera. So what we bring to the table for this meeting is basically various options of how the town can go about, again, allocating who pays what of the $130 million. And historically, the town has used a classified tax rate due to the magnitude of the commercial, industrial, and personal property in the community. Not dissimilar in any way to the town of Billerica, the city of Woburn, and some other peers along 128 in major cities as well. Smaller communities don't have the luxury of doing that. They have to have a single rate, meaning that the residents don't get a benefit in terms of reduction in tax dollars by having the commercial property in their community. So having said that, what we've laid out here for you are a few different options, starting with option A, B, C, and as you know, a lot of you, I think everyone, all the members have been on the board last year, so you've all gone through it. And I'm prepared to answer any questions I can that the board has relating to this.
Mr. Denizio, did you have anything, or should I go right to the board?
I have nothing to add.
All right, Mr. Hogan.
I don't have any questions for Jim. Over the years, he's answered all of the questions from me and other members of the board, and I'm okay at the moment. Thank you.
Mr. Priest.
Again, yeah, no real questions. Jim, thank you for this. I know that this is a very valuable document for us. It makes it very easy to understand. So thank you for breaking it down in terms that we can understand. I don't have any actual questions, but I do appreciate everything you've put into this.
Well,
Thank you, Mr. Priest. Mr. Morandi?
no questions, but I just want to thank your staff and you, Jimmy, for the past 8 years that I've been here. For this, every year I learn something new every year, so I just want to thank you and the people down back that actually help you out with this, and just appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Couldn't do it without them.
Mr. Runyon?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no comments.
Thank you, Mr. Runyon. For me, Jim, I know it's a yeoman's job trying to get all this together, you and the Board of Assessors, and Mr. Giannino. People don't realize how much you guys put into this. I mean, we can appreciate it because we can, talk to you and see what you do. And then, to Nick's point, the preparation and the backup material you've been providing for years is probably, is the reason why we have no questions, because we're so well informed about what's going on, the rate and all the taxes and stuff. But thank you for that, and thank you, Board, for, as Joe stated, years and years of doing this. Okay, this is a public hearing, so is there anybody in the room from the public who would like to comment on this? Okay, seeing none. Is there anybody out on the WebEx that would like to comment on this?
This is good stuff.
Folks. I mean, come on.
Are we seeing anybody?
No hands, Mr. Chairman.
John's hands up.
Hands up.
Joe, I see Joseph, is that a hand up or something? No? Right. Okay, nothing further from the public. That being the case, I'll be looking for a motion to close the public hearing.
Make a motion to close public hearing.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, moved and seconded, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, 500 on the public hearing being closed. Any discussion or? Absolutely, Mr. Morandi.
So after sitting at meetings and, thank you, Mr. Chairman, after sitting at the meetings and looking at all the different options we have here, being a resident naturally, and then being a business owner with land, that is used for commercial side of it, I can't stress enough how good this is for us. It's not out of control, it's not gonna make people in town, as far as the business side go, oh, I gotta start to look someplace else. It's still, very reasonable rate for everybody involved, especially the commercial side, and that's what I look at the most, because let's face it, that's where our base is coming from. So once again, I'm gonna say it again, the three down back, you got the two assessors, and Mr. Gino and yourself, thank you very much, and anybody else that was involved in coming up with all these scenarios for us. It's really helpful, it's done a great job, I just wanted to put that out there for the public to hear. So, thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or
Yeah, if I may.
Mr. Priest?
I just, for everyone who doesn't have this document, I think it's important just to note that what we have before us are, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different options in terms of how to manage the tax levy. And as Jim will tell you, there are the ones that, that common sense, I think, tells you are in an appropriate ballpark. And then they go ahead and show us what it would, how to affect the community if we decided to shift the tax rate either towards residents or towards the commercial side. And it really puts in perspective, to Joe's point, how, having the commercial aspect here in Burlington protects residents a great deal. In the back of this document, there's a breakdown of all the communities around us, and outside of Woburn, everyone's residential rates and their corporate rates are all pretty high. So, I mean, when we talk about taxes, we're doing pretty good, and I know it doesn't always feel that way. And then just to circle back to Mr. McDonald for a second, this might be another thing that we have to talk to Ken Gordon and Cindy Freeman about in terms of, exemptions for seniors when it comes to fixed incomes, because I know we were talking about this, that amount that, in terms of income that they had, that they're at is just, it's obscenely low, and there are still seniors that, don't qualify, and that's grossly unfair, in my opinion. But that aside for a moment, I think that if it were me, I would lean into option A. Just gonna put that out there for the board's consideration.
Thank you, Nick. Mr. Hogan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has always been, it's that thing that nobody likes to talk about. No one likes that, taxes, but the services that are supplied in the town of Burlington with what we receive in taxes makes this town special, and an awful lot of people are moving here, relocating because of the services and the ability to take a look at the tax rate and realize that it is acceptable to them. But that doesn't mean that we don't look at these very closely, because some of us have been around a lot longer, and having an income that doesn't go up much anymore, you want to make sure that the taxes don't go up so that people can't stay here. So this has always been a proud moment, in a sense, that whoever the 5 people sitting here have been over the last 12 years with me, but we've done our due diligence to make sure that we've respected the ability of the people in town to pay the tax and to receive the benefits through the services that we do provide. So it is a lot of work, and generally, I know we kid about this, but generally we get more calls about the services if we don't provide them than the tax rate that pays for them. So I've always felt very good about what we've done in Burlington with what we have to work with, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan. One thing that hasn't been mentioned, whether towns around us are higher or the one that is lower, is the fact that we don't have user fees. I know some of these towns definitely do, so that's another thing to take, to take into consideration is they have, most of them have, or they all have higher taxes other than one town, one city, but they also have user fees in addition to the taxes. We don't have that.
You're 100% right.
One other comment, question actually. I don't know how, the pandemic affected it, but the senior tax incentive, do we still do something for that?
Yes, the work-off program?
Yes.
The
Yeah, so
work-off
maybe-
program is largely handled by Council on Aging, Town Clerk, and I think Gary's office gets involved in that. That's not something the assessors do. We handle the property tax exemptions, or deferrals. And, I discussed it with each of the board members, and I intend to write up, some information on that will help you. You've all expressed to me your desire to speak to the state delegation about that, because it's really incumbent upon them and their colleagues to change that. And I intend to do that in the next couple of weeks for you, and hopefully maybe they can introduce a new bill the beginning of the year that will help expand those. And as Nick mentioned, it really, and you've alluded to it with the prior speaker, the fact that their incomes are not going up with increases in property taxes and increase. And these things have not been increased in many, many years, and they really have. But I will say this body, town meeting in particular, and the Board of Assessors for initiating them, has done a fantastic job with all types of exemptions, whether it's for veterans, widows, blind persons, and other ones. And this community is in the top, I would say, probably easily 5%, and maybe less than that, in terms of the most generous, in terms of the amount of money people receive if they can avail themselves to it. So really what you have indicated to me you wanted to pursue is what we can do to make sure more people can avail themselves to that. And I look forward to working with you on that.
Great, thank you. And one other thing, just for the record, and for those who are watching or may not even be aware of this, anybody who's looking for one of those options, who's the best point of contact to?
The assessor's office.
Assessor's office.
The staff is always willing to do it. With the pandemic, we used to have an annual meeting in conjunction with the Council on Aging. Obviously, with COVID, we couldn't have those gatherings, but our staff is there all the time and fully available and capable of answering any questions people have. It's all confidential, so nobody has to be fearful of, making a phone call, trying to elicit some information. And it does require that you have to share some information. But again, that information is held in the strictest confidence. And we try not to keep many documents, the fewest amount of documents we need to do our job. And other ones are cautiously retained, so nobody can be curious about things.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could just add, it's not just the seniors that have these abatements. Veterans have them available to them also.
Correct.
So if you're a veteran and you have some questions, contact the assessors.
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you, Chair.
Very good. Anything further from the board or any?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, just wanted to point out a couple of numbers, I think, because the folks at home don't have these paper work in front of them. Jim mentioned total value in town between commercial and residential is over $7.5 billion. The residential sector comprises more than half of that at $4.6 billion in value, where the commercial side is $3 billion, yet they're picking up 62% of the levy. I think that's important to point that out. And it looks like our rate for 2022 will be the same rate as 2021. Wanted to point that out to the folks at home.
Thank you, Mr. Runyon. Any further, any motions, anybody?
Just one point of clarification.
Sure.
Tonight, we're voting on the class factor, correct?
Correct.
Jim, would you just explain to people listening what that means, so,
Sure.
just so they know what we're talking about?
Selectman Runyon just alluded to it, so essentially, I mentioned it before, because Burlington does have a large percentage of commercial, industrial, and personal property, the town has the luxury of shifting. So as it was alluded to before, the commercial property represents somewhere around 40% of the total value of the town. However, through this shift that the board has historically voted, and I anticipate you voting a factor tonight in that direction, they end up paying 62% approximately of the total tax burden. So in essence, it puts it upside down in terms of who's paying what. And if I did hear one member mention option two, we'll take that, option A, we'll take that just as an example. If that were to be the vote, on average, the residential single-family home, which is somewhere around $600,000 this year, the average tax increase would be $263, almost $264 on an annualized basis. And Mr. Runyon is correct. The tax rate, again, if A is adopted, would be the same at $995, and the commercial rate, once certified by the Department of Revenue, would be $2664.
A lot of moving pieces here.
Well, with that, I'm happy to make a motion. I'm gonna make the motion that we approve option A as presented to us.
Second.
All right, moving seconded to go forward with option A is the classification. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? 500, option A.
And, Paul, do you want to have them actually vote that factor, or are you comfortable it's embedded in that?
If you have the motion, Jim, if you want to read it, and then,
I would suggest, for clarity, that you add to that, the motion you just made, you could simply add another sentence that say, which would result in a class factor of 1.63668.
For the CIP.
You see that under class factor?
For the CIP rate?
Correct. That's really what you're voting.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, do you want to amend your motion?
Yeah, I'm happy to amend the motion that we approve option A as presented with a CIP rate of 1.631668.
Mr. Brady, you want to second that one?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? 500 for that amended motion to include that class factor. Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Pleasure seeing you. Have a great
Thank you,
Thanksgiving.
Mr.
all.
Sheehy.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Okay, next item on the agenda is a new public hearing. It's item 329, approval of a Class 2 license. So this is,
Transfer, Jim? It's transfer, right?
it's worded as approval, but it is a transfer of ownership, but would be a new application for Class 2. Correct?
It's a transfer with a name change.
Oh, transfer with a name change, all right. But where this is a public hearing, I need a motion to open it.
Make a motion to open the public hearing?
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of opening the public hearing?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstained? Okay, hearing is open. Sir, can you have a seat and identify yourself for the board?
Hello, my name is Marat St. Surin.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Marat St. Surin.
Okay. And just give us a little synopsis of your request.
What was that?
A little, what your
what you're
request is
doing.
about, what you want to do.
Oh yeah, so this is a transfer from Great Rides All the Time to Sweet Rides. Just taking over there for office work.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit about the business?
Oh yes, I'm an authorized dealer. I go to auctions, I buy vehicles, and I sell them online. I do paperwork. As of right now, the way I do paperwork, I'll go to a local McDonald's or
you speak up just a little? We can hear.
So I'll do my paperwork right now at local fast food places, which is not really proper. So reason why I'm taking over for our Great Rise is so I could do my titles over there instead and meeting people at Dunkin' Donuts and things like that.
Okay. All right, Michael, I'll start with you this time. Anything on this? No, Ms. Morandi? No. Mr. Priest?
No, I don't believe so.
Mr. Hogan?
I just want to check with staff. Did you guys get all the paperwork and is everything in place as far as you were concerned? Okay, thank you. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr.
Just ask you to have the ad put into the hearing,
Okay.
the advertisement,
Someone want to make a motion that we include the ad into the hearing
as printed.
as printed?
Yeah, I'll make the motion that we include the ad as printed.
Okay, is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? 500, the ad is included. Okay. Mr. Hogan, anything further?
No, everything in here that it's consistent. Are you doing business now
Yes, sir.
in this location?
Yes. I received titles at this location.
Okay, so you know that no vehicles are to be on site? and-
Yes, sir.
Yeah, all right, good. I'm good, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right, this is a public hearing, so is there anybody in the room that wants to speak about this agenda item? Is there anybody out on WebEx that would like to speak about this agenda item? All right, seeing none, I'll look for a motion to close the public hearing.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to close the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? 500, the public hearing is closed.
So being no further questions, if anybody has
Any
more
further
questions.
questions? Okay, anybody else, Mr. Morandi?
Make a motion to approve. Transfer of Great Rides, all the time to Sweet Rides.
There's a second. on that.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to approve the transfer from Great Rides All the Time to Sweet Rides. All those in favor? Aye, opposed, abstained? 500. All set.
That easy.
Sandy, I'll touch base with you tomorrow.
All right, thank you. All right, guys. Good night.
Good night. Okay, item 330 is an update on the warrant articles. All we have is zoning, I believe, at this point. And we can, if anybody wants to take them separately, we could. If anybody wants to vote to put them on the town meeting warrant. This is not discussing the individual articles. This is just to get them on the warrant for January. So if anybody wants to do them separately, we can do them separately. Or if anybody wants to approve them as a group, we can do that as well.
Make a motion to approve them as a group.
Okay, it's been moved to approve them as a group. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion on these? No? Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained? 500 on the warrant articles. Similar situation with the minutes. We have to approve some minutes. If anybody has to abstain or has any objections or wants to discuss any of the minutes that we have listed, these are the special session from May 3rd, special and executive session from May 3rd, alcohol subcommittee meetings from June 8th of 2020, May 12th, 2021, June 9th, 2021, July 12th, 2021, or September 22nd, 2021, small cell meetings, minutes from January 23rd, 2019, February 6th, 2019, March 27th, 2019, and April 8th, 2021, or strategic planning meeting from July 14th of 2021.
It's a lot of minutes.
Yeah. So, does
Lot of
anybody
meetings.
want
Hours here.
to abstain, discuss individually, or do we have any, a motion to, approve them as a group?
Make a motion to approve them as a group.
Okay,
Unless somebody has,
nobody, okay, it's been moved, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, moved and seconded to approve the minutes, previously stated as a group, all those in favor?
aye.
Opposed, abstained, 500. Subcommittee, Mr. Hogan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to acknowledge we have 4 new members of the police department who have just recently participated and graduated from the Northern Essex Community College Methuen Police Department Academy. And I just, we've all had them before us when we've approved them, so. Officers Daniel Murphy, Colton Bader, Joe Belcito, and Richard Riley are now new members of the Burlington Police Department, and they've passed the academy, and we welcome them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Priest.
You know, I really don't have much of anything. I just want to say that we've got, Joe, you okay? I know, it's a rare, mark the date and time.
Just like 2 in a row, kid.
I just want to say that we've got our turkey trot, I believe, on Saturday. You know, so folks, you know, turn out for that. Right, Rich, it's Saturday?
I think it was last week.
It was last Saturday?
How'd you do?
I shouldn't have said anything. Now I look like a schmo. Oh, all right, well, if it was last Saturday, I hope everyone had a good time.
Some of them are still finishing, Nick.
Yeah, like me. I can't find the finish line. Well, with that then, I'm just gonna say I hope everyone who's celebrating Thanksgiving has a wonderful and happy Thanksgiving, and we'll see you in December.
Thank you, Mr. Priest. Mr. Morandi, can you follow that up?
Nope, it's a one-man show. Yes, I have a couple of things I'd like to, first of all, I'd like to congratulate Mrs. Sagarino for coming back. I know we said it earlier, but I had to say it again, Paul, they've done a great job. You were truly missed, for certain comments and clarifications and all kinds of stuff. I truly missed you being sitting over there, but that gentleman over there, this woman right here did a great job, filling in. Betty's over there in the other room. I can't thank them enough for everything they did. Just glad to have you back. All right, so that's done with that one. Let me cross that off my list. I got a couple.
Go ahead.
All right, let's see, trash, not trash leaf, yard waste. Republic's still, once again, having a hard time finding drivers. Put your leaves out, they're gonna come around. I had a meeting today with, Mr. Sanchez. He assured us that they will come and pick up your leaves. A lot of phone calls about when they come and when they come in. They're still on the same schedule they were before. Apparently, some days they don't have drivers and some days they do. So, but they will pick up the leaves prior to, whatever the deadline is. I forget the deadline.
December 3rd, if I'm not
December
mistaken.
3rd, is that what it is? So they'll take care of the leaves. Next, once again, real quick, the hunting is still going on at the landlocked forest, so everyone just be aware of that. And last but not least, DPW building. The new building that we're building over near the mall is coming out fantastic. It's starting to look good. I had to sit in a different spot the other day because they blocked off the roads. I couldn't get where I usually sit. It was really good. But it's coming along quite great. Thirdly, or lastly, I might say, I sound like you tonight, huh? But the last thing is, just remember the dumpsters outside. Dumpsters outside this building here. Once again, I came by the other day and there was stuff on the ground and stuff on the sides of it and just hanging out all over the place. These people that are in this building have to look at that every day. When they go out there, they are emptied quite a bit. They're emptied 2 to 3 times a week now. Christmas is coming, holiday season's here, so I'm sure there'll be a lot more boxes from Amazon, quite a few other companies that deliver. So please be cautious. If it is full, just take it home and bring it back when it's empty. It's not that much longer, for a day or two. Please break up the boxes. You put them in their hole, that means we get less inside the containers. I will be talking to Rich over there to see if we can do a little segue like we did last time. Maybe some morning we can get together and do that. Other than that, I am finished.
Thank you,
Have
Mr.
a nice
Morandi.
Thanksgiving, everybody.
Mr. Runyon.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of items. The fuel assistance program, they're now accepting applications to folks, income eligible folks who are finding it difficult to heat your home this year. We have a couple of different options for you. If you're a senior, if you're over 55, you can get an application at the COA. If you're a family under 55, the Department of Youth and Family Services will be processing applications, and veterans can see Mr. Hannafin at the the Veterans Office. It's been a long-running program, and I think we've all been to the gas station recently, and it's gonna be a difficult winter for a lot of folks in town. So don't be shy. Go up and get some help, because it's there for you. COA activities, they've been sort of ticking up over the summer and fall months. Our ridership is creeping up a little bit, our lift program and as well as the appointments program. Some of the activities are back up and running again, although not full speed. With bingo, for example, we're running that every 2 weeks up there, and we're getting good turnout each time. So kudos to the staff up there at COA. It's been difficult for them, trying to run some of these hybrid programs and helping the folks at home who, aren't necessarily familiar with the computers and online stuff. They've been working very hard since the start of COVID to get those folks acclimated and involved again with the programs at COA. Reminder, the tree lighting is Saturday, December 5th at 4 o'clock on the town common. It's always well attended. They will have fireworks as well as a visit from Santa Claus, of course. And last but not least, and I expect Mick, Paul, or Jim, or someone probably mentioned that we were out at the Nordblum site the other day with the DHCD Secretary Mike Keneally. So, yeah, I'll probably toss that back to you, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Runyon. Mr. Sanchez mentioned it at our last meeting, and in conjunction with our Economic Development Director, Melissa Tatakalis, Selectman, Town Administrator, we met with the Secretary of Housing and Economic Development, Mike Keneally, who graciously extended $1 million grant to Town of Burlington for part of our water infrastructure program. And it's an exciting time because things are starting to move along around town and within town. But that's about all I had. Town Administrator's report. Who's gonna take that one?
I just have one item, Mr. Chairman. I
Yes,
just
Mr.
want to let the board know, we're very fortunate to receive a very generous donation from a citizen. Dr. Richard Lewis donated $1,500 to the town. He's a resident and a dentist, and he wanted us to provide some additional public safety training or equipment. And through his generous donation, I've worked with the police and fire chief to, we're gonna utilize that for 2 additional tactical medical kits for cruises. These are medical kits that could handle a mass casualty type incident. And the police department's been trying to transition to these. They're about $600 or $700 each, so it's not a typical medical kit that everyone would carry around. So thank you very much to Dr. Lewis for that.
Thank you, Mr. Sagarino, Dr. Lewis, thank you. Any old business or new business?
Do you have anything, John?
Okay, citizens' time. Anybody in the room? We have some Weeblos in here. Have anything for citizens' time? Any questions? Anything about what we did? Any questions on any of the items we talked about? None? We did that good of a job?
Well, maybe they have some questions off camera.
All right, we'll talk to you after. Anybody on WebEx have anything for citizens' time?
No answer.
Nothing? Okay, with that being said, I'll be looking for a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? Okay, made in second. All those in favor to adjourn? Aye. Aye, opposed, abstained, 5-0-0. Mike's.